Won again in San Francisco last night, backed by a strong start and excellent bullpen work. So, what if the Pirates don't trade any of this starting pitching depth? That's next on Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome to Locked On Pirates. I'm Gary Morgan. Today, got a jam-packed episode coming off a big win last night against the Giants. That's 7 wins in the last 8 for your Buccos. We'll break down how the Pirates pulled off another W, what's clicking right now, and what, if anything, this stretch means for the deadline. Then we'll dive into the trades, or I guess maybe lack thereof, and explore what it could look like if the front office decides to hold on to all that starting pitching. And finally, we're taking a trip down to the farm to spotlight Pirates' top power prospects, who's mashing in the minors, and who might be the next big bat to break through. Let's get into it. Last night in San Francisco, the Pirates kept the good times rolling with a gritty 3-1 win over the Giants, their 7th win in the last 8 games. Bailey Falter got the start. He gave the Bucs 5 solid innings. He wasn't perfect. Never is, really. Rarely. 4 walks and a solo homer to Willy Adames in the 4th, but he kept the damage to a minimum. On the other side, the Giants sent out Justin Verlander. He hasn't looked great this year, but he looked sharp last night early, striking out 7, allowing just 1 run on 6 hits. That run came courtesy of Lierber Peguero, who launched a solo shot in the 5th to tie things up. Man, was it good to see some power from that kid. That's what makes him interesting at all. So to see him put one over the wall was good there. From there, it was a bullpen showcase. Braxton Ashcraft came in and absolutely shoved. 3 perfect innings, no hits, no walks, just 1 strikeout, total control. He's quietly becoming one of the most reliable arms in the Pirates' pen. Then in the 9th, with David Bednar unavailable after pitching the night before, Dennis Santana stepped up and locked down his 6th save of the season. The offense didn't explode, but it did just enough. In the 8th, the Pirates loaded the bases, and Joey Bart came through with a clutch RBI single. Peguero added an insurance run with a ground out, and that was all they needed. Tommy Pham continued his hot streak. He went 3 for 4, extended his hitting streak to 9 games. He's been incredible. And we've all, for the most part, buried this guy. And while I think this signing wasn't the way to go to give this team what they actually needed, he's certainly done more than enough for me to stop calling him a waste of a signing. Look, the key still doesn't fit the hole, but it's not the key's fault. You know what I mean? It's not the key's fault that it's not the right fit. He's done his job the best of his ability, and I think we owe him backing off a little bit. So here we are. Pirates are surging. Pitching is holding strong, and the trade deadline is looming. And all that kind of brings us to segment 2, which we're going to get to in a little bit, which is what if the Pirates don't trade any of this starting pitching? So it's going to be an interesting second segment. I want to wrap up about this game because I just think overall the team has been playing better since that unfortunate series back at PNC Park. They just did not go well for them in any way, shape, or form against the White Sox. Since that series, everything has looked different. I've heard the only explanation I've heard for what has kind of turned things around for this team was that Don Kelly had a talk with them about wanting to see a certain level of intensity. Come on now. That can't be the only thing that happened. If all it took was a coach walking in a room and saying they wanted to see a certain level of intensity, I have to imagine that this would have happened before. That said, Maybe there is something to that because maybe it's something very similar to the speech that Don Kelly gave them when he took over. And that sent them on a little bit of a trip where they played a little bit better baseball for a while. And then it regressed, and maybe they're the type of unit that needs a refresher course every once in a while on the expectations of this coach. You would hope not. They're grown adults. But if that's all that's changed, and really, what about the roster has changed aside from that? Nothing has happened except for that some guys are playing a little better. Yeah, you got like some different faces here and there, but nothing like real impact, nothing that's been playing a ton. I would even say like the offense by and large has still kind of been down. Last night they had a lot of hits, but only 3 runs to show for it. So it's not like the offense is just suddenly crushing it and everyone is feeling it together or something. It hasn't been like that at all. In fact, I think they're still struggling in many ways. The pitching's been good. They've had a couple down outings with the pitching, but for the most part, the hitting has either made up for it or it was their one loss in this big stretch. It's good to see. It's odd to see as you're barreling towards a trade deadline. I mean, because you're going to be moving a lot of guys. And I guess what you should take away from it is most of the guys they're going to move, or you think they might move. Well, what kind of an impact is that really going to have? I think you have to be fair, right? When you trade Tommy Pham, there's no way to look at this except for it's going to hurt. The way he's been hitting for the last month, it's going to hurt. This offense is going to take a hit. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying it either. But if you're a really honest person, you want him traded, but you have to admit what it's going to do to your lineup. You're taking arguably their most consistent bat out of the lineup, Tommy Pham. That's both sad and true, right? And no, I'm not going to bust into a Metallica song. But it's the truth. IKF's going to hurt. Not defensively, I don't think. But he's been a consistent bat. He's got the highest average on the team. He's had that most of the season. He's also batted 9th. So it's not like it has to be. It's not like it has to be 9th. Like he could have been hitting up higher, but that's where they kept him. And largely because he was hitting 9th. I just don't feel like you're going to feel it the same way you will, Tommy Pham. If that makes any sense at all. And IKF, yeah, the average is nice, and I've appreciated him as a player. I really have. I've appreciated him as a player. Don't like him as a shortstop defensively, but I appreciate him. I'm able to look past it and see him as a good player. Okay, I do. In a perfect world, he's a guy I'd love to have on my baseball team. He wouldn't start. Like he wouldn't be a starter, but I bet you I'd find a way to get him into 4 or 5 games a week, just bouncing him around. He can do a lot of different things for you, and he handles the bat relatively well. There's no power there whatsoever, though. And they're hitting him in the bottom of the lineup. I think ultimately we're not going to feel that all that much. Really don't. And now who else really could go from this offense? Let's say it was Joey Bart. Pardon me while I don't give a crap. That's not going to hurt anything. What's he providing? They're not trading Horowitz or anybody else like that. They're not trading Brian Reynolds. They're not trading Cruz. They're not trading Gonzalez. Probably not trading Hayes. I just don't see where this offensive collapse is going to come from at the deadline. So I think you're going to lose a couple players. Pham's going to hurt the worst probably. But I just don't see any way around getting that trade out there. He probably is going to return a decent prospect because of what he's done this last month. So for that, in many ways, we should all be grateful for Tommy Pham and to Tommy Pham, believe it or not. Yeah. I think ultimately the trade deadline is not going to hurt them there. Now, if they don't trade any pitching, I think that's where we're going to have some trouble. We've heard the rumors: Mitch Keller, Andrew Heaney, Bailey Falter, all names that could be moved. But what if Ben Cherington decides to hold the line? Coming up next, we'll dive into that scenario, what it could mean for 2026. Everyone's been there, logging in early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your favorite spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last minute deals. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy? The app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there's no surprises whatsoever. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Hey, make sure you hit me with a subscribe and a like, and tell a friend about the show. Appreciate it. Tell a friend about all the Locked On shows. MLB Game Night is really, really fun. I love watching that every morning, just seeing what happened across the league. And I told you already about Chris Carter over at Locked On Steelers. Make sure you check that out with training camp going on. He's killing it. Definitely putting the best show out there on the Steelers that I think I've heard in a long time. It's great. So let's talk about this rotation, because if the Pirates decide not to trade any of their starting pitchers at the deadline, things could get really interesting. Right now, the starting five looks like this: Paul Skeens, Mitch Keller, Bailey Falter, Andrew Heaney, and Mike Burrows. Of those five, the only one not under contract or team control for 2026 is Andrew Heaney. And honestly, I'd be shocked if he's still here after the deadline. He's a total rental, and he's pitched well enough to draw interest. In fact, I heard the Yankees were interested just yesterday. So let's assume he's moved. That leaves one open spot. To me, that's enter Johan Oviedo. He's working his way back from injury, and he was just promoted to AAA in his rehab. If he's healthy, and he sure is pitching like it already in the minors, he's likely to slide right into that fifth spot. That gives you a rotation of Skeens, Keller, Falter, Burrows, and Oviedo, all under control for next season. Now, here's where it gets crowded and kind of exciting at the same time, right? You got Braxton Ashcraft, who we just saw dominate out of the bullpen last night, but he has starter pedigree. He's been used in bulk relief, but that's not sustainable long term. You can't run a guy out there once or twice a week for 3 innings and expect that to hold up for a full season. If the Pirates are serious about his development, he deserves a look in the rotation, or they need to convert him into a true bullpen arm, one that they allow themselves to use a lot more often than they have been using him. Maybe they even need to let him transition into a back of the bullpen role. But it's just something to think about. We're going to go through a lot of these names, so don't get hung up on any one of them. Carmen Majinski, I think we can probably stop trying to hammer him into a starter's role. He's found his groove in the bullpen, and I personally think that's where he should stay, but I can't promise you that he's done with that in his head, and I can't promise you the Pirates are done with that in their heads. In fact, I can't promise you that a suitor for him wouldn't have designs on potentially putting him back in the rotation. He didn't have the greatest numbers, but I think if you let it play out kind of the way they're starting to let it play out with Mike Burrows, I think eventually you get to a point where they kind of start to crack through that issue that they were having, or that threshold they couldn't get over, or that one inning where everything went the wrong way. Now, ultimately with Carmen, I think he's a better pitcher if he's throwing his whole arsenal and throwing at max effort for a shorter period of time. I think that's why he fits better in the bullpen, and I think ultimately that's what the team will figure out. The real wave, though, is coming from the farm. You've got Bubba Chandler, Thomas Harrington, and Hunter Barco, all of whom could be ready either later this year or early next. Harrington's already on the 40-man, and the other two will need to be protected soon. These are legit arms with upside, and they're knocking on the door. You can never have too much pitching. We all know that. We've all heard that. Injuries happen, guys regress, roles shift. But you also can't leave grapes on the vine so long that they turn into raisins. At some point, you got to pick them or risk wasting the potential. And beyond that, the Pirates could choose to sell some of these juicy grapes before they're even picked. Trading one or two of these arms, especially from the group that's close but blocked, could bring back real value. Maybe it's a bat that, that we absolutely need. The point is, this depth gives them flexibility. But here's the real issue. If they can't all fit. You can't carry 8 or 9 starting pitchers into a 5-man rotation forever. At some point, holding on to all of them becomes like hoarding grain in a drought. Dying of thirst because you refuse to trade grain for water. The Pirates have built up a valuable stockpile, but if they don't use it wisely, whether that's on the field or in the trade market, they risk wasting it. And we shouldn't forget that Jared Jones should be working his way back into the picture sometime in the second half of next season. It's another high-octane arm with a frontline potential. So even if they move a piece or two, the pipeline is still flowing. That's where we really need to think about this rotation because, again, I kind of covered the basis of who's at play here. This is just the wave right now. Next year you could be adding some names to that list of guys that you're looking at, guys that you're thinking could factor in here, and not even getting into the bullpen aspect of this because a lot of the time that's what happens with overflow starters. The thing is right now, the 3 main protagonists in our story that are in the minors, and I guess if you want to add in Oviedo or Jared Jones, those are 5 guys who all should have pedigree to start. Really. So a couple things to think of here. First, one of them is I think you have to look at your 5-man rotation that we started with. Burrows, and assuming Heaney's traded. Burrows, Falter, Keller, Skeens, and then probably Oviedo, right? Who's the low man on the totem pole then? It becomes what? Probably Bailey Falter. Now, Bailey Falter is an enigma. He can come out and give you 7 scoreless, or he could blow up and give up 4 runs and 4 1/3. Okay? He's the least consistent of the group, I would say. And he has by far the lowest ceiling of what's left in this rotation, I would say. I'm going out of my way to point out his shortcomings because I think that's the only other way you can think about working these kids in is finding another guy that you're going to move out or at least out of the way. I don't know that Bailey Falter's stuff translates to the bullpen. So maybe it would be best to think about trading him. But if you don't trade him or Keller, you're probably stuck with what you have, right? I think we'll go into another season wondering who's going to be up here and who hasn't. The other thing I'd like to say, despite Tommy John surgeries cropping up for guys like Oviedo, and I know Jared Jones had some kind of a modified Tommy John, but you get the picture. Elbow surgery one way or another, missing big chunks of lengthy time. I just got to say, under Ben Cherington, for real, this team has been incredibly lucky. And I know it doesn't feel that way. Because think about way back to the day we lost JT Brubaker to Tommy John surgery, right? We lost Jared Jones and Vince Velasquez, who I'm not sure you care, but we've had a lot of them, right? It feels like. Look around the league. We haven't. We've had relatively few pitcher injuries once the season actually starts to the starting rotation. They've actually been fairly clean. And I don't just mean this year. I mean like for a few years. This team's remained relatively healthy on the mound. I'm not saying that you like go into this trade season like pretending that that's going to continue forever, because bad luck always comes. But maybe you don't need 9. Like maybe you have to understand what you have to sell, what you need, and make something happen. And it's for that reason that the third segment today, I'm going to spend the whole time talking about what the Pirates do have coming from the minors with power. Because the only reason that you would not feel the need to trade pitching for power at this point, based on the numbers we talked about in the show yesterday, and the glut of pitching we just talked about in this segment, would be that you think the power's coming internally. I'm here to tell you, folks, it might be, but it ain't going to be in 2026. Stick with me. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need the extra boost to stay sharp and energized. I was on this hole the other day. It was an island shot, and all 4 of my buddies were like, we're going to make this shot. Not a single one of us made it. I wish we had had one of these 5-Hour Energies. Maybe it would have given us the boost we needed. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go to without chasing down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LockedOnGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th. On one order and cannot be used with other promotions. This code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Let's shift gears and talk about the bats, specifically the power bats in the Pirates system, because while the pitching pipeline gets most of the attention, there is a growing group of hitters who could bring some real thump to the future lineup. I'm going to start with a familiar name, and it's going to make you mad, so just get past it, and it's not going to stay like this. But Jack Suwinski. Now, he's currently in the MLB, and it feels appropriate to mention him, if only because right now he's leading the Indianapolis Indians in home runs. That should tell you how very little power there really is in prospects that you care about at the AAA level. Okay? Suwinski's always had pop. It's consistency that's kept him from locking down a long-term role in Pittsburgh. And I'm afraid it's consistency of at bats that provide the power numbers for Jack. I don't think he's going to get better at a lot of things that he does badly. I just think he's one of those guys that if you were bullish and stubborn and played him 162 games, I think he'll hit you 25 home runs, 25 home runs in a season. And that might be all he does. Does that make any sense to you? I'm not sure that's sustainable. I'm not sure that's a player that you can have on the team. And I just want to toss in a little nugget here because just yesterday I heard that the Tampa Bay Rays had checked in on Jack Sawinski. Is there anyone listening to this podcast that doesn't think the Rays would turn him into a 30 home run guy like tomorrow? It just feels that way, doesn't it? I mean, it feels like a couple years from now, some people like us will be talking about trying to reacquire him after the Rays fixed him. That's sad, but true. Again, I'm not busting into Metallica. Now, let's start with the next wave, okay? I want to be clear here. Most of these guys are not knocking on the door just yet. There's upside, there's potential, but they're not the cavalry. They're the seeds, and they still need a little bit of time to grow. Termar Johnson is the first one. He's the closest to the bigs among this group. Johnson's hit tool was his calling card when he was drafted, but he started to show real power over the past year. He's now in Double-A, and he's showing signs of becoming a true middle-of-the-order threat. Still, he's likely a 2026 arrival at the earliest, okay? And I actually think he's got some work to do to make that realistic. Connor Griffin. I mean, God, everybody's been hearing about Connor Griffin, 2024 first rounder, physical specimen, plus raw power, and he's still raw overall. He's got the tools to be a 25 plus homer guy, but he's still a little bit of a project. And I would think like he's got an outside shot at getting to the majors next year. He's only in high A Greensboro right now, but I think like another 20 games or so, you're going to be considering moving him to Altoona, probably to finish the season out. And even if you don't, he's undoubtedly going to start in Altoona next year. So you're going to have that Double-A backing right away. And I think it's a hop, skip, and a jump to the majors for a guy like Connor Griffin after that. Unless the Pirates block him with a ton of veteran talent that they got. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have even gone there, guys. I couldn't keep a straight face through it. So I apologize. Axial Plaz, he's in high A Bradenton, or in low A Bradenton. 19-year-old catcher with legit pop. Plaz is intriguing. He's shown the ability to drive the ball with authority, and if he sticks behind the plate, he becomes a rare commodity. But again, he's probably years away. Your Donnie De Los Santos is in single A Bradenton, still just 20. De Los Santos has flashed power with 9 home runs this season, but he's been inconsistent. He's got the frame and swing to grow into more, but he's more of a wait and see than a plug and play. This one I'm really excited about. Edward Florentino, big-bodied corner bat with loud tools. He's only 18, so we're talking about a couple more years for sure development arc here with him, but the raw power is there. The swing is pretty. If you haven't seen video of Edward Florentino yet, well, and I hope you're old because you won't get this reference unless you are. It's hard not to see Darryl Strawberry. The swing looks so much like Darryl Strawberry to me. It just floored me. In Double-A Altoona, Esmerlin Valdez. I think a lot of you have heard his name coming up because he was playing alongside Connor Griffin there for a while. Valdez has shown flashes of power and is a bit more advanced than some of the others. He's still raw, but he's worth watching as he adjusts to the upper level pitching. If he does well here in Altoona, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't make it to Indianapolis to start next year, and then he becomes a real option pretty soon. Javier Rivas is another one. He's in high A Greensboro. Rivas has shown sneaky pop, and he's been a steady performer. He's more of a depth piece, I think, but he's earned a mention with this with his production. We got to go back to Cam Devaney, who they just picked up. I know he's older and everything, but he's a guy that I think is going to be relevant very soon. Devaney isn't a traditional prospect because of his age, but he's been a very reliable source of power. With IKF likely to be traded, Devaney could be the next man up. And I would expect him to compete with Liover Peguero, who just homered last night, for playing time at shortstop down the stretch. So yes, there's power in the system. There's hope. But let's not kid ourselves. Most of these guys aren't close, and they're not the answer to the Pirates' offensive needs right now. That's why it's so important that this front office doesn't just sit back and wait. If this team wants to compete in the near term, they'll need to add from the outside, whether that's via trade, free agency, or both. The pipeline's promising, but it's not ready to carry the load yet. And I would just ask all of you, after what we just went through, maybe be a little more open-minded to trading some pitching. Maybe don't consider the idea of trading pitching as selling off or starting over or scrapping things or ruining part of their team. That's where they have the depth. Okay? That's where they have it's like you have money in your savings account and all you would have to do is transfer it to checking in order to cover a bill that came in. But you just refuse to do it and instead go out begging and hoping and pleading that somebody will give you $20. Okay. The Pirates have, I think, what they need to go out and buy what they need. It's up to them to actually pull the trigger. And it's up to us to handle it responsibly when they do and not freak out. It may very well be the best thing they can do for this team is to adjust the balance of talent here from off pitching to offense a little bit. And you might have to trade something painful. Maybe that is a Mitch Keller. Maybe it's a Bailey Falter. Maybe it's partially to make room for some of these kids. But it's a problem that we're going to watch. We're going to watch this develop for a minute. I'm interested to see how they go about it. But one thing I just don't think they can do is just sit still. And I know that's kind of been what everybody wants Ben Cherington to do. And I understand why you're not comfortable with him. But guess what? You, me, and Dupree, we all lost that battle. He's here. The reality of what this team actually has to get accomplished doesn't change just because they didn't do what we wanted. Just because they didn't fire the GM does not mean that the reality of this roster and what's here and what's coming isn't there. You have to look at it like this. You have to look at it and understand that that's the logical place to do it. That's the logical place to take talent from and the logical place to get talent back with. It's a tough situation to be in and scary because you don't like the GM. I get it. But you can't just sit here and do nothing. They have a very obvious need and a very, very obvious way to pay for it. Get it done. That's all I got for you today. Be back at it with another new episode tomorrow, and I won't have to stay up until 2 a.m. to have the information to talk about for the previous game this time because it's an afternoon game today. Isn't that great? Let's go Bucks.